In the hushed dawn of a Minnesota morning where a delicate mist clung to the towering sentinel pines, and the tires of his pickup crunched softly on the gravel path, Michael Parker's heart hammered against his ribs as he arrived at the Wildcat Sanctuary. 5 long, agonizing years had stretched into an eternity since Michael last beheld Luna. Once a fragile bobcat kitten plucked from a suburban nightmare, she was now a magnificent adult, a creature of wild beauty he could scarcely imagine. For 8 precious months, he had poured his very soul into nursing Luna back to health, forging a bond so profound, so unbreakable in his hopeful heart. But cruel fate, in the guise of unforeseen circumstances, had ripped her from his care, forcing him to break his whispered promise to visit. Yet through the long years of silence, punctuated only by the sterile updates of emailed words and captured images, his thoughts had never strayed far from her. Now, after half a decade of yearning, he was finally here, his breath catching in his throat. Would the magnificent bobcat that awaited him within those fences even recall the man who had saved her fragile life? Or would she see him as nothing more than another fleeting stranger? This is a tale woven with threads of impossible odds, the enduring fierce power of connection that transcends the boundaries of species, and a reunion 5 years in the making, a moment that would challenge everything known about the mysterious heart of a wild animal. Before we delve into this extraordinary story, please, if you haven't already, smash that like button and subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of the animal kingdom. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you won't miss a single heartwarming or awe-inspiring story. The first rays of morning sunlight pierced through the dense canopy of pines, painting shifting dappled shadows across the gravel path that wound its way to the Wildcat Sanctuary. Michael Parker, his hands slightly trembling, glanced at his watch, 7:15 a.m. Still a precious 45 minutes before the sanctuary officially opened its gates to the curious public. He steered his trusty weathered green pickup into the deserted parking lot, the crunch of tires on the loose gravel echoing the frantic rhythm in his chest. 5 years, 5 long, desolate years, since his eyes had last gazed upon Luna's wild beauty. Now standing on the cusp of his 38th year, a gnawing uncertainty clawed at his hope. Would she even remember him? The sanctuary, nestled amidst the gentle rolling hills of northern Minnesota, stood as a beacon of hope, a refuge for rescued wild cats who had lost their chance to thrive in their natural habitats. The morning air was crisp and invigorating, carrying the sharp, clean scent of pine and the distant awakening chorus of the wild. Michael inhaled deeply, striving to steady the storm of emotions within him before finally stepping out of his truck. "You made it," a warm, welcoming voice called out, slicing through his anxious thoughts. Sarah Miller, the sanctuary's director, approached with a genuine smile gracing her lips. A tall woman in her early 50s, her graying hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail, she was clad in practical khaki pants and a faded blue sanctuary polo shirt. "I wasn't sure if you'd change your mind at the last minute. I've been trying to get here for 5 years. Michael replied, extending a hand that still felt slightly unsteady. "Nothing could have kept me away today." Sarah clasped his hand firmly, her gaze conveying a deep understanding. "We've heard so much about you from Luna's transfer papers. The man who saved her life." A lump formed in Michael's throat, a bittersweet ache of memory and longing. "I just did what anyone would do. Not everyone would dedicate 8 months of their life to raising a bobcat kitten." Sarah countered gently, her eyes filled with respect. "Luna's quite special around here. Come on, I'll show you to her enclosure." As they walked through the quiet sanctuary, Michael's mind raced back to the crisp October morning in the Colorado Rockies, when the phone had rung forever, altering his path. As a licensed wildlife rehabilitator with over a decade of experience, calls about injured or orphaned animals were not uncommon. But this one had been different. A family in Boulder, misguidedly believing they had purchased an exotic domestic cat from an unscrupulous breeder, had discovered 3 terrifying months later that their increasingly aggressive pet was in fact a Bobcat kitten. When Michael arrived at the suburban home, he found Luna, though that name would come later, huddled in a dog crate, a tiny ball of fear, severely underweight and visibly traumatized. The family had been feeding her inappropriate food, utterly clueless about the intricate needs of a wild creature. As her natural predatory instincts began to surface, they had become terrified. "We just want it gone," the husband had stated, his eyes avoiding Michael's. "Can you take it somewhere?" Michael had carefully, tenderly loaded the fragile crate into his truck, his heart aching for the tiny life within. At his small wildlife rehabilitation center nestled in the foothills outside Denver, he had painstakingly coaxed the kitten out of her terrified shell. He named her Luna for the perfect crescent moon-shaped marking that graced her right ear. Those first few weeks had been a delicate dance, a tightrope walk between providing the human care Luna desperately needed to survive and ensuring she never became fully domesticated. Human contact was kept to an absolute minimum, with feeding gloves a constant barrier, direct interaction strictly limited. But Luna was young, barely 4 months old, her impressionable mind wide open, and she had imprinted on humans during that critical developmental period. Despite Michael's best efforts, a fragile, undeniable attachment had formed. "Hey there, little wild cat," he would whisper softly as he prepared her meals of raw meat, essential vitamin supplements, and the occasional live prey to help awaken her innate hunting prowess. "You're going to be strong someday." As weeks bled into months, Luna blossomed. Her once dull and patchy coat transformed into a glossy, luxurious tapestry. She gained weight, her small muscles grew strong and defined, and her natural bobcat behaviors emerged with increasing confidence. Michael constructed a spacious outdoor enclosure behind his small cabin, a wild haven where she could climb, explore, and hone her burgeoning hunting skills. But as Luna approached her first birthday, Michael faced a heartbreaking reality. Despite his unwavering dedication, despite the progress she had made, Luna would never be a viable candidate for release back into the wild. Her early imprinting on humans, the absence of a mother to teach her the subtle arts of survival, meant she would forever remain dependent on human care in some capacity. "It's not fair to keep her here," he had confided in his colleague Sarah Thompson, a compassionate veterinarian who specialized in wildlife. "My setup is temporary at best. She needs more space, proper facilities, and the company of other bobcats." Sarah had wholeheartedly agreed, helping him research sanctuaries that could offer Luna the best possible life. They had discovered the Wildcat Sanctuary in Minnesota, renowned for its ethical treatment of animals and its sprawling natural enclosures. The sanctuary had graciously agreed to take Luna, understanding her unique and challenging circumstances. The day Michael had loaded Luna's transport crate into the sanctuary's vehicle remained etched in his memory, a raw wound on his soul. She had looked up at him with those intelligent amber eyes, and he had felt the crushing weight of betrayal. "I'm sorry, Luna," he had whispered, his voice thick with unshed tears. "This is what's best for you, even if you don't understand." He had vowed to visit her within a few short months once she had settled into her new home. But life in its cruel and unpredictable fashion had other plans. Michael's wildlife rehabilitation work was largely grant-funded and inherently seasonal. Just 2 devastating weeks after Luna's departure, he had received the crushing news his funding had been abruptly cut. Simultaneously, his father in Arizona had suffered a severe stroke, a life-altering event that demanded his immediate attention. With mounting bills and pressing family responsibilities, Michael had been left with no choice but to dismantle his small Colorado operation and move to Arizona to care for his ailing father. Years had drifted by, marked by the slow, arduous recovery of his father, who sadly never regained full independence, requiring Michael's constant care and support. Michael had found work with the Arizona Game and Fish Department, but the meager salary barely covered their essential living expenses. Each year, a silent promise echoed in his heart. He would save enough somehow to make the pilgrimage to Minnesota. But each year, some new unforeseen expense would arise. Mounting medical bills, the sudden need for car repairs, the relentless maintenance required to keep their small home habitable in the punishing desert heat. He had maintained contact with the sanctuary through the sterile medium of emails and the occasional bittersweet phone call receiving updates and cherished photos of Luna. She had blossomed into a magnificent adult bobcat, they assured him, healthy and as well adjusted as could be expected given her unusual beginnings. She shared a spacious enclosure with another bobcat, also rescued from an inappropriate pet situation. The two weren't bonded, their solitary nature prevailing, but they coexisted peacefully. Then last winter, a profound silence had fallen. Michael's father had passed away peacefully in his sleep, leaving a void that echoed in the quiet house. After the funeral and the somber task of settling the estate, Michael found himself the unexpected recipient of a small inheritance. Finally, after years of longing, he possessed both the financial means and the newfound freedom to make the journey he had postponed for what felt like an eternity. Here we are. Sarah's voice gently broke through Michael's reverie as they approached a large enclosure nestled away from the main visitor path. This is Luna's home. The enclosure was breathtaking, a sprawling half-acre of natural Minnesota landscape, securely enclosed by high fencing. Within its boundaries were several tall, sturdy structures for climbing natural rock formations that spoke of ancient times, dense thickets of vegetation offering privacy and shade, and a small, gently flowing stream that meandered through one corner. In the far back, Michael could discern the shadowy outline of a covered den, a sanctuary from the elements. Where is she? He asked, his gaze sweeping across the vast space, searching yearning. Probably in her favorite spot. Sarah replied, her hand gesturing towards a sturdy wooden platform elevated about 10 feet above the ground. She likes to watch the sanctuary wake up from there. And there she was. Luna was no longer the fragile, frightened kitten Michael had rescued, nor even the awkward, adolescent bobcat he had painstakingly rehabilitated. She was now a creature of breathtaking majesty, a magnificent adult. Her muscular body, he estimated around 25 pounds of pure wildness, was covered in a stunning coat, a rich tapestry of browns, tans, and whites, adorned with the distinctive black spots and the regal ear tufts that proclaimed her species. Even from this distance, Michael could clearly see the unmistakable crescent moon marking on her right ear, the celestial inspiration for her name. She's beautiful. He breathed, his voice barely a whisper, filled with awe and a profound sense of something he couldn't quite name. She's one of our healthiest residents, Sarah replied, a note of pride in her voice. And one of the calmest around our staff, which we attribute to your early socialization work. You did an excellent job of finding that delicate balance. She's not tame, but she's comfortable with humans at an appropriate distance. Our dear Michael nodded, his throat tight with a complex knot of emotions. Luna hadn't yet noticed their presence, her attention fixed on a small bird flitting between the branches of a distant tree, a flicker of wild instinct in her intense gaze. Now, Sarah said, her tone shifting, becoming more serious. I want to set realistic expectations. While Luna is comfortable with our staff, she may not remember you specifically. It's been 5 years, which is a significant portion of her life. Bobcats in captivity can live 20 to 25 years, but they don't necessarily form the same long-term recognition bonds that some other species do. "I understand," Michael said quietly, trying to brace himself for the inevitable disappointment. "I'll be happy just to see her even if she doesn't remember me." Sarah studied him for a long moment, her eyes thoughtful. "Normally, we don't allow visitors inside the enclosures. But given your unique history with Luna and your professional background, I'm making an exception. Would you like to go in?" Michael's heart leaped a surge of hope coursing through him. "Yes, absolutely." "Follow all my instructions precisely?" Sarah said firmly, her gaze unwavering. "Luna may be accustomed to humans, but she is still a wild animal with instincts and strength to match. I'll be with you the entire time." Michael nodded, listening intently as Sarah outlined the strict protocols. They would enter slowly, deliberately. No sudden movements. No direct eye contact initially. They would sit quietly on a bench inside the enclosure and allow Luna to approach them, or not entirely at her discretion. If she displayed any sign of stress or aggression, they would leave immediately. With these crucial rules firmly established, Sarah unlocked the first gate of the double-entry system. They stepped into the small holding area between the two gates, the first gate clanging shut securely behind them. Then, with a shared breath, they prepared to open the second gate, the threshold to Luna's wild domain. "Ready?" Sarah asked, her eyes meeting Michael's. Michael took a deep, steadying breath. "Ready?" The second gate swung inward, and they stepped into the enclosure. The sounds and smells were instantly different, more visceral, more alive. This was Luna's territory, and they were mere visitors here, treading softly on her wild earth. Sarah led Michael to a simple wooden bench, positioned about 20 feet from the entrance, and they sat down in silence. Luna had noticed their arrival. Her head swiveled towards them, her ears erect and acutely alert. She watched them intently from her elevated platform, her magnificent body perfectly still, except for the subtle, almost imperceptible twitch of her tail tip. "She's assessing us." Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "This is perfectly normal." Michael nodded, keeping his own movements to an absolute minimum. His heart was pounding with such force, he was sure Luna could hear its frantic rhythm even from her lofty perch. He wondered what thoughts flickered behind those intelligent amber eyes. Did she perceive them as intruders, potential threats, or simply curious anomalies in her daily routine? For several long, breathless minutes, they sat in complete silence, the only sounds the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant calls of unseen birds. Luna remained on her platform, her unwavering gaze fixed upon them, occasionally shifting her position slightly, but maintaining her safe, elevated vantage point. A knot of worry began to tighten in Michael's chest. What if she remained there aloof and distant for the entirety of their visit? Then something shifted. Luna's posture subtly changed. Her ears perked forward with a renewed intensity, and she tilted her head slightly as if trying to catch a faint scent carried on the gentle breeze. In one fluid, graceful motion, she rose to her feet, stretching her lithe, muscular body before beginning her descent down the series of platforms that led to the ground. "She's coming down," Sarah whispered, a note of surprise coloring her voice. "That's unusual behavior for a new visitor." Michael held his breath, his entire being focused on the approaching wildcat. Luna reached the ground and began to move towards them with the characteristic gait of a bobcat. A blend of effortless grace and latent power, each step deliberate and measured. She stopped about 15 feet away, settling onto her haunches, her intelligent amber eyes regarding them with an intense, unwavering gaze. "This is a good sign," Sarah said quietly, her voice filled with cautious optimism. She's curious, but cautious. Perfectly appropriate behavior. Michael nodded, unable to speak, his throat constricted with a potent cocktail of hope and trepidation. Luna was even more breathtaking up close. The morning sunlight danced across her fur, illuminating the intricate patterns of her coat. The pure white fur of her underside provided a striking contrast to the dark spots and stripes that adorned her back and flanks. And there, unmistakable on her right ear, was the crescent moon marking exactly as he remembered it, a celestial signature etched in fur. "Hello, Luna." He finally managed to say, his voice soft, and even barely above a whisper. At the sound of his voice, Luna's ears twitched, pivoting slightly in his direction. She stared at him more intently, her head tilting almost imperceptibly to one side. Something flickered in those ancient amber eyes. A spark of recognition, interest, Michael couldn't be certain, but a fragile tendril of hope unfurled in his heart. "She's responding to your voice." Sarah observed her tone laced with intrigue. "That's interesting." Encouraged, Michael spoke again, his voice a little stronger now, infused with years of unspoken longing. "Do you remember me? Wildcat, it's been a long time." Luna stood up, her short tail swishing slowly behind her, a subtle indication of her focused attention. She took a few deliberate steps closer, then stopped again now, only about 10 feet away. Michael could see her delicate nostrils flaring as she intently drew in their scents, the air thick with unspoken questions. "This is extraordinary." Sarah whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. "She rarely approaches new people this closely." Michael's throat felt tight, his heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. Even if Luna didn't fully remember him, the fact that she was exhibiting such unusual interest was more than he had dared to hope for. Then he did something he hadn't consciously planned, a spontaneous act, born from a deep well of memory. When Luna had been a vulnerable kitten in his care during those intense months of rehabilitation, he had developed a soft, distinctive clicking sound, a gentle communication signal he would use when approaching her enclosure with food, or when he needed to check on her well-being. Without thinking, his tongue instinctively made the familiar sound now. Click, click, click. Luna's reaction was immediate and utterly unmistakable. Her entire body tensed, every muscle coiled. Her eyes widened, locking onto Michael with an intensity that stole his breath. For a long, suspended moment, neither of them moved, the silence between them thick with unspoken history. Then, with a fluid grace that belied her raw power, Luna began to walk directly towards him. "Stay very still." Sarah cautioned, a new note of concern in her voice. "This is highly unusual behavior." But Michael wasn't afraid. A profound sense of certainty washed over him, a deep intuition, born from the countless hours they had spent together in those formative months. Luna remembered. Against all logic, against the vast chasm of 5 long years, and the accepted understanding of Bobcat cognition, some indelible part of her recognized him. Luna approached to within 5 feet of the bench, closer than Sarah had ever witnessed her come to a visitor. She sat down, her unwavering amber eyes never leaving Michael's face. Then she did something that made Sarah gasp, a sound of pure astonishment escaping her lips. Luna made a sound, a soft, high-pitched chirping vocalization, a rare expression for bobcats in captivity, typically reserved for mothers communicating with their vulnerable kittens or occasionally for greeting familiar members of their small social groups in the wild. I've never heard her make that sound before. Sarah whispered, awe evident in every syllable. Michael felt a rush of warmth flood his chest. tears welling in his eyes. Slowly, deliberately, he extended his hand palm down, fingers relaxed, not reaching towards Luna, but offering his scent more distinctly, a silent offering of peace and remembrance. Luna stretched her neck forward, her delicate nostrils flaring as she inhaled his scent, more deeply, more intimately. Then, in a movement that seemed to defy all the sanctuary's established protocols, she took the final hesitant steps forward and gently bumped her head against Michael's outstretched hand. Sarah was utterly speechless, watching with a mixture of professional amazement and profound emotion as Luna, a wild bobcat who had resided at the sanctuary for 5 long years, voluntarily initiated physical contact with a human visitor. "Hello, old friend." Michael whispered, his voice thick with emotion, tears now streaming freely down his weathered cheeks. With exquisite care, he gently scratched behind Luna's ears, a spot he vividly remembered she had enjoyed during their rehabilitation days. Luna closed her eyes briefly, leaning ever so slightly into his touch, the soft chirping sound emanating from her once more, a vocalization that seemed to bridge the vast 5-year chasm that had separated them. For the next 20 precious minutes, Luna remained near them, sometimes sitting quietly, a regal presence beside the bench, sometimes moving restlessly around, exploring her familiar territory, but always returning to Michael's side. She allowed him to gently stroke her head and neck, never displaying the slightest hint of stress or aggression. It was as if they were reconnecting in a language that transcended human words, a silent understanding forged in those critical formative months of Luna's early life. A bond that had somehow miraculously endured the long years of separation. "I've worked with wildcats for 20 years. Sarah finally said, her voice filled with wonder and a touch of disbelief. "I have never ever seen anything like this." "She remembers you, Michael. There's simply no other explanation." Michael could barely speak, his heart overflowing with a profound and overwhelming mix of joy and gratitude. "I never stopped thinking about her." He finally managed, his voice thick with emotion. "Not for a single day." Eventually, the subtle signs of overstimulation began to appear. A slight restlessness in Luna's movements, a more frequent flick of her ears. Michael, understanding the delicate balance of interacting with a wild animal, recognized the importance of respecting her needs and boundaries. "Thank you for this," he said to Sarah, his voice filled with heartfelt gratitude as they prepared to leave the enclosure. "It means more than I can possibly express." "You're welcome to visit again any time," Sarah replied warmly, her eyes filled with a newfound understanding. "In fact, I'd be incredibly interested in documenting this bond. It could provide invaluable insights for our work with other rescued wild cats." Michael looked back at Luna, who had retreated to a comfortable distance, but was still watching him intently, her amber eyes holding a depth of recognition that warmed his soul. "I'd like that very much," he said, a renewed sense of purpose filling him. "I won't let another 5 years pass." As they closed the gate securely behind them, Michael felt a profound sense of peace wash over him, a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. The heavy weight of guilt and regret he had unknowingly carried for 5 long years, the gnawing feeling that he had somehow abandoned Luna, began to lift. She had not just survived, she had thrived at the sanctuary. And against all conceivable odds, she had remembered him. Over the next year, Michael became a regular visitor to the sanctuary. He collaborated closely with Sarah and the dedicated sanctuary staff, meticulously documenting Luna's extraordinary level of recognition and her unique social behavior towards him. These detailed observations contributed significantly to the sanctuary's growing understanding of bobcat cognition and the profound impact of early imprinting experiences. With the unexpected inheritance and his extensive background in wildlife rehabilitation, Michael eventually made the life-altering decision to relocate to Minnesota, accepting a fulfilling position with a local wildlife management agency. This move allowed him to visit Luna regularly, a cherished ritual that brought him immense joy, and to volunteer his expertise at the sanctuary, contributing to their vital rehabilitation programs. Luna remained a wild animal, fiercely independent, driven by her innate instincts and always requiring respectful boundaries. Yet her unusual and deeply moving bond with Michael continued to defy conventional understanding of bobcat behavior. In her own wild way, on her own terms, she greeted him each time he visited, sometimes with that soft, heart-melting chirping sound, sometimes with a gentle, trusting head bump against his hand. Their remarkable story quietly spread through wildlife rehabilitation circles, a powerful testament to the complex and often mysterious bonds that can form between humans and wild animals, and the profound responsibility that comes with nurturing those connections. Luna, in her own unique way, became something of an ambassador at the sanctuary, helping to educate visitors about the crucial importance of keeping wildlife wild and the special lifelong considerations required for animals that have been imprinted on humans. On cool Minnesota mornings, Michael would often sit quietly within the familiar boundaries of Luna's enclosure, a silent observer as she went about her bobcat business, effortlessly climbing the sturdy structures, exploring the natural rock formations, and engaging with the hunting enrichment toys thoughtfully provided by the sanctuary staff. And occasionally, amidst her wild pursuits, she would pause, her gaze meeting his, acknowledging his presence with a soft sound or a fleeting glance, a poignant reminder of the enduring connection they shared. It wasn't the life Michael had envisioned when he first rescued a frightened bobcat kitten from a suburban home in Colorado a lifetime ago. It was in many profound ways something far richer, far more meaningful. A relationship built not on the desire to tame the wild, but on a deep and abiding respect for Luna's inherent wildness and the extraordinary circumstances that inexplicably brought them together. And on those truly special days, when Luna chose to approach him to share a fleeting moment of connection before gracefully returning to her wild ways, Michael felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the rare and precious privilege of being remembered by a creature who, by all conventional wisdom, should have forgotten him long ago. A valuable lesson. The incredible story of Michael and Luna reminds us that the bonds we form even across the boundaries of species can have a profound and lasting impact. It underscores the importance of respecting the wildness of animals and the unique challenges faced by those who have been imprinted on humans. Their connection serves as a powerful testament to the enduring power of compassion, patience, and the mysterious capacity for recognition that can exist even in the most unexpected hearts. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this heartwarming reunion. Please share your comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales of the animal kingdom. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this story?